Benjamin Šeško. Now, this is an interesting one because on the surface, get goals. Young Bart's, as you'll know, 21, doing in a team we like to do business with, shall we say, in Red Bull Leipzig. You know, we've got the history with them. It's an interesting one, though, because David Ornstein, who we know, has got quality links, has mentioned it. A few others have linked him with Liverpool. And when we've been tracking in Bart's or trying to get info, there has been talk that, yes, he is one of the names that Liverpool have looked at. But when I watch him, the eye test tells me a physical specimen that is what I call a bland merchant, for the lack of technical description, as in can smash a goal in for 25 yards. However, that is not always, as we know, exactly what Liverpool are looking for and doesn't necessarily meet that facilitator element. So, Bart's wagon wheel stats, what do they tell us about Šeško?
So, as always, we'll look at his playing time to try and give you a bit of physicality, because as we are, in the back end of another season, the boys are approaching 30, 40, they're looking at 55 plus games a season. That's a typical Liverpool game. So we have to look at the minutes they played, right? To give you an idea about whether they can handle the capacity and whether we can step them up by about the sort of minimum or the maximum we should be reckoning about 25% minutes. So if we look at his profile, he has clocked a 2,000-minute season. That was in Austria. Typically, not a big surprise for those who love football. It's from Red Bull Salzburg to Red Bull Leipzig. So a pretty, I think they've got a private jet that just quickly shifts players between two clubs. So, it's just how it works. And then he's in the Bundesliga. He's clocked the same number of minutes, give or take, about 4 than he did last season. So he is on to hit probably his career high, I would say, with about 10 games to go. I've seen lights flicker out of a lot of things, but he should hit his probably career high in terms of minutes. So minutes have gone up. That's good. So he's increasing his load. If we look at his, if we just talk about this per 90, always better that way. XG, which is another thing we look at. So what's he doing? So last season he came in for the 31 games. He started 17 games. He's already started more games than last season. So last season he got 0.4 XG per game. Okay, not bad. And XA, which is assists, of 0.07. So combined 0.52. He's on 0.4 already, and non-penalty XG is 1.3. So it's a little bit down, but it's got a little bit to go. Okay, so it's not negative, but just to be honest with you, these are the ballpark. This is the same ballpark that Semedo is at Bournemouth, the same ballpark that the guy Simmons we've done. It's the same ballpark as is it Gittins at Borussia Dortmund? Yeah. So these are all in and around this kind of level of XG and XA per 90 minutes. And Cody isn't far off this, apart from he's slightly better in the goals and the assists, and vice versa for Diaz. So these are in the right place, is what I'm trying to say. Yes, it's a slight concern he's dropped off a little bit, but let's see where he is into the season, I would suggest for that. In terms of shots, so his shots have, so in the Austrian Bundesliga, he was hitting 3.5 a game. In the German Bundesliga, when he came in, he was 2.8, let's be kind. He's now down about 2, but they're probably, so his percentage he's maintained the percentage on target, which is good. About 50% of his shots are on target, which is where you want. All right, so he's kind of honing his game a little bit, should we say? It's probably a way to go. But let's get back to the old favourites. So up the top here, we have 3 blocks. Regular viewers of TMM will know what we look at. So defensively, as we're not in a German Bundesliga is a good league, but generally speaking, the Premier League asks for, and the way we play, asks for all 11 players to do their work on and off the ball. So we can't really have too many red bars in this defensive area. Tackles is fine. But what's pleasing to see is in his clearances, 86% off for a forward. A little bit weird, but that might be because he's back on doing corners or something like that. Aerials 1, 61. That's defensively. So again, you could be back on corners, could be on the edge, those kind of things. And then you've got other in terms of blocks and interceptions. So that gain, we've said before, when he's doing interceptions, it's because he's maybe covering passing channels, that kind of thing. So these aren't bad, not at all, considering we look profiled the lad in Bundesliga 2, the Greek lad. He didn't have great defensive stats, but the rest of it was good. So these are comparatively good, and they're better than his mate Simmons, I think, who we did at RBL last show we did. So, but what is he doing between the boxes? Now, as a forward, it's not massively important, but it's still, we still need to understand what his current role is. All right. So touches in the penalty box, that is a concern. I'm not going to lie to you. That is in the 7th percentile for touches in the attacking penalty box. If we're buying him to play either 9 or a wide forward, that's just nowhere near what we require from our forwards to be done. Okay, progressive passes received, again, 24% off. That's really low. So that is saying to you that he is, as this suggests, he carries it from deep to the front players, right? And he takes players on when he does that, because he take-ons are in the 80th percentile and he carries in the 64th. But that typically isn't what our forwards do. Our forwards receive high, and then they take on in the final third, and they create from there. So their pass completion is normally, I mean, Mo's, even when he's taking risks, in the 60s, so 33% pass completion. Again, is not a great percentile to be seen for a potential replacement for one of our front three. Okay. But okay, let's put that to one side. What does he do actually in the box? So shots, 39th percentile. So again, that's very low. It's considering we're normally asking our forwards to be taking 4 a game. Yeah, 4 shots a game. You remember Chiesa, when he comes on, typically gets 2 a play, and he's only on 15 minutes. So this guy averages just over that in a whole 90. So non-penalty XG, 56, non-penalty goals. He's in the 82nd. Okay, so he's getting the chances, should we say, but he's not putting them. He's not creating those into any output. A little bit like Samayo at Bournemouth, but Bournemouth, he had it. His dashes were a lot greener. He was a lot further on the chart. So you could say he was a little bit further along his development than this lad. Shot creating actions, again, that's just 15th percentile for one of our forwards. That's just nowhere near the level we would look at for a forward. Non-penalty XG and assists, 43rd percentile. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, for being honest with you. I've put him in here as a 9. I think we were chatting about who's he coming in to replace. So he's coming in here. This is him compared to Darwin, who is likely to be one of the ones that profiling to be the replacement for. Yeah. And I mean, there is some similarities, but Núñez performs better in non-penalty XG and assists. Núñez performs better in terms of carries, passes, aggressive touches. Let's have a look at non-penalty XG is better at. So there's some elements here that Núñez does better. So the only thing that he doesn't do as well is non-penalty goals and clearances. So yeah, I would be. This is an interesting profile for us to be at. I'd be questioning if you're looking to replace a player, Darwin, or another player. I would have expected a Wagon Will to be closer or better than the player you're getting, like, moving on from. So this wouldn't necessarily. I mean, if we look at him maybe compared to, let's look at Diaz. Well, Diaz on here somewhere. Just quickly running through. Cody, can't find Diaz on. I've lost Diaz. Okay, if you look at it for Cody, maybe Paul's Ryan. Cody absolutely dominates on everything. So I think there's a lad we looked at. This lad here we looked at as a forward as well. Again, dominates on everything. Gittins we've looked at as well. Okay, similar kind of profile. So yeah, there's a few. And just to pull back, the guy we looked at in the Bundesliga 2, again, outperforms on probably half the metrics there. So there's Šeško from the F-brief data. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Let's be fair, it's a mixed bag. Okay, maybe there's some things that they've got from underlying data we don't know about. If we look at the Bundesliga stats, okay, so when I said before, Bundesliga, just publish everything. They tell you how far someone's run and the rest of it, which is really useful for us. So he's got 9 goals. Okay, great. 3 assists. Again, these numbers are nowhere near our current forwards. Okay, they're not near it. Sprints 5, 6, 7 in, just trying to say the matches he's played, but 21 matches, 17 starts I think it was. So that's okay. High intent speed 35. Yeah, that's quick. So that is pretty rapid. Ks per game to 191 is covered in 17. It seems a bit low, but yeah, that's okay. And intensive runs 1370, which is okay. You could put probably not the highest we've profiled with, but so he has some pace. He does do some of the running, should we say? But in terms of some of the other metrics we looked at, they're not great. We look at some of the bits that I will run. So these are his splits for any given game. Duels, 28, which that's not far off what some of our forwards do. Percentage of EPV, 3.5. That's low. That's like Josh on a bad day. Pass success in this game is 93, so that's above what he normally does. He only had about 4% of our possession, whereas normally our forwards are involved in the double figures. What does he do with it? So if we look at his wagon wheel in this particular game, for me, he was on average. Remember, the black dot has to be in the middle of the club, so he's on average for all of the metrics. He's not above. Okay, so he doesn't do anything particularly great in this game. And this is the same sort of game where Simmons was in as well, and Simmons actually outperformed all his metrics in this game. So as a comparison we've looked at previously on the show, Šeško didn't do as much as Simmons did. If we look at how involved he is, so similar kind of patterns with the way Red Bull play, but if we look at his involvement, very little involvement. That's a pass or a touch, maybe six or 5 every 15 minutes. That's a low amount. That's like Wolves' second half for Mo, right? So that's maybe a little bit off, and he's involved in the low passing chains. He receives some balls in the zone 14, but not a lot. So yeah, it's an interesting one in terms of what does he do for EPV? Does he figure anywhere here? I can't see him anywhere. No, no, he's not actually. So he's not involved in terms of creation or stopping the opposition. So that's something to be aware of. In terms of defensive actions, he's not featuring on. There's no high amount of defensive actions in the areas that he would occupy. Yeah. So I have to be honest with you. It's not. He has 1 shot in this game, right down the middle, 0.29 and doesn't score. So yeah, there's some things to like maybe, but I mean, if you're going to tell me he's going to be about £60 million, I would be a little bit concerned we were going to be spending that amount of money on a forward that's got a fully tax as well. Remember, you've got to take something off their metrics to come in the Premier League, right? So that's around 15% marked down. So that would knock his stats down even more. So yeah, I would imagine we're doing a lot of scouting for forwards, aren't we? I would imagine this guy is lower down on our list, should we say?
Yeah, it's like you say that there's little bits that are intriguing. The pace, because I know you've mentioned before, Cy Brundish always says about 36 kmh is rapid. So he is quick. He is big, as you said, in the air, his clearances. He almost has a resemblance of Núñez, so to speak, in his stature, if that's the right phrase. Price mark, as you said. Now, it was interesting because he signed a contract last summer to remove the release clause, enhanced wages for him. But all the stories that came out then were a case of, well, actually, he has, quote unquote, a gentleman's agreement with Red Bull that if someone comes knocking with 70 to 75 million euros, which if you get him back at Tesco, probably is around what? 58 to 62 million, somewhere around the 60 million mark, essentially, in that regard, which is interesting. And the other one, Bart, and just trying to make any case before we completely knock it down, is some might look and say, well, 8 Champions League games, 4 goals. So he's got 15 in all competitions in 31 appearances and 4 assists. But from the underlying metrics, I mean, you can even see I had a look at some of those goals. We don't need to play them. I did describe him as a lot of a bland merchant. A lot come outside of the area and are wonder strikes, which Liverpool, as we know, don't really like to get involved in those players because they don't sort of translate well, and that isn't how we play. Is the risk a little bit with Šeško, Bart, that it looks good from almost a FIFA perspective, as in he's fast, he scores long distances, but the metrics just don't translate to a Liverpool forward particularly, do they?
No, I think this is... I'm going to put it out there. I don't even think this is that Brandon Núñez. I think you could end up signing Núñez Mark II, and you'd have very similar problems.
Yeah.
So I've just worked out his distance per game. If you look at the starts he's had and the total he's done for the season, it's just under 10. So typically our players are putting in about 11. So I mean that's only a K difference, but he's still there's a bit of a but that, again, some of that might be the role like are asking him to do. Some things are not, but that's a little bit on the low side of a bit actually for a season average. But it doesn't profile to me. I'm looking at this, and I always caveat, and we always do, that the club will have extensive data behind the scenes.
Yeah,
but it doesn't look like the kind of forward that we would be profiling to move on from our current setup.